A man can outrun a lot of things, but not the sound of his own dog refusing to move. By the time Ethan Cole reached the New Mexico desert, he'd run out of places to pretend he was okay. The world here was a flat, endless sheet of rust and gold, broken only by low mesas and the whir of distant wind turbines. Heat shimmered on the horizon, turning the road into a wavering ribbon of silver. The town of Red Mesa wasn't even a dot on most maps, just a scattering of buildings around a truck stop, a shuttered motel, a bar with a dying neon sign, and an old drive-in theater with a rusted screen. It was exactly what Ethan thought he needed. He was 37, skin-tanned and lined, dark hair shaved short, the kind of solid, compact build that spoke of a lifetime of training. Once, people had called him Sir and Operator, and the guy you want on the door first. Green Team, then Navy SEAL, K-9 handler. He'd walked into places most people only saw on classified briefings. Now, officially, he was discharged under review. Unofficially, he was the guy they blamed when a drone strike went sideways on the other side of the world and turned a safe house into a crater full of civilians. The letters from the Navy were cold and precise. The letters from the families were not. The only one who never looked at him differently was trotting along the shoulder of the road a few feet ahead, tongue lolling, ears pricked. Rex. The German Shepherd Malinois mix moved like a coiled spring, every muscle ready. His coat was a deep sable, darker along the back, with a faint scar cutting through the fur over his right shoulder. Shrapnel, 2 years ago, Kandahar. His eyes were the color of old whiskey, intelligent and always watching. "Almost there, buddy," Ethan muttered, shifting his grip on the grocery bag. 2 cans of chili, coffee, dog food, essentials. That was life now. Red Mesa's only motel squatted at the edge of town. Ethan lived in the back corner room, the one the owner had given him in exchange for fixing the plumbing and keeping drunks from breaking things on Saturday nights. The air smelled of dust and motor oil, and the faint, sharp tang of creosote after last night's storm. He should have kept walking. He knew at the moment Rex stopped dead. 1 second, the dog was pacing ahead, nails clicking on the broken sidewalk. The next, he froze, every hair along his spine lifting. A low rumble started in his chest, not loud, but deep, primordial. Ethan stopped too, instinct tightening everything inside him. You didn't ignore Rex, not in Helmand, not in Syria, not here. "What is it?" he asked quietly. Rex didn't look at him. His nose was up, working the air. Then, without warning, he veered left, off the main road, through a gap in a half-fallen chain-link fence, toward the skeleton of the old Sunray drive-in. The drive-in had died sometime in the late 90s. The massive screen towered over a cracked lot sprouting. Weeds. The concession stand was boarded up, the projector building gutted. Teenagers snuck here on weekends to drink and write initials on the back of the screen. Nobody came here in the middle of a weekday. Nobody except the dog who never did anything without a reason. "Rex!" Ethan called. "Heel!" The dog ignored him. He didn't just ignore, he dragged. By the time Ethan caught up, Rex had his teeth sunk into the cuff of Ethan's jeans, tugging hard, muscles bunching under his fur as he tried to pull Ethan along. "Hey, hey!" Ethan swore under his breath. "Easy, boy. What's gotten into you?" Rex released his leg and shot ahead again, tail straight, body low. He moved between the old speaker posts, weaving, sniffing, pausing, then surging in a line that was anything but random. He was tracking. Ethan's heartbeat shifted without his permission. The air changed. The world narrowed to dust motes, discarded soda cups. The distant creak of the screen, and the dog locked onto something only he could smell. The trail ended at an old sedan. It sat crooked in the far corner of the lot, half hidden behind a dead billboard, paint flaking, windows filmed with dirt. It shouldn't have been here. Everything else out here had been stripped for parts. This thing still had all 4 tires and intact glass. Rex circled the car once, twice, then slammed both paws against the trunk and barked. Not the sharp alert bark Ethan knew from raids. This was different. Short, urgent bursts, punctuated by frustrated whines. Nails scraped furiously at the metal, clacking and screeching. "Rex, back!" Ethan ordered, the word coming out on pure training. The dog dropped to a sit by the rear bumper, chest heaving, eyes locked on the trunk as if he could burn through it. Ethan set the groceries down slowly. Every instinct he owned told him to walk away. Call the sheriff later. Pretend he hadn't felt that sudden chill walk up his spine. Instead, he pressed his palm to the trunk lid. Warm. In the desert, metal got hot fast. But this was different. There was residual heat under the surface, like someone had been driving not that long ago. Ethan glanced around. The lot was empty. The road was a good 100 yards away. Heat shimmered. No one was watching. He tried the handle. Locked. He stepped to the side window, cupped his hands to the glass, and squinted into the gloom. Something moved inside. Not the jerking flail of an animal, a slow, weak twitch. Adrenaline hit him like a shot to the chest. His voice dropped into that other register, the one he used on ops. Rex, guard. The dog pivoted, placing himself between Ethan and the rest of the world, nose to the wind. The perfect, deadly silhouette of a working dog about to be very, very upset with anyone who came too close. Ethan didn't waste time. He took one step back and drove the heel of his hand into the corner of the side window. Glass spiderwebbed, cracked, then gave on the second hit, collapsing inward with a crunch. Hot air spilled out, thick, stale, carrying the faint smells of gasoline, sweat, and duct tape. He reached in carefully, fingers searching for the lock, popping it. The door creaked as he yanked it open. The girl inside was maybe 16. Her dark hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her wrists and ankles were bound with silver tape, sticky and too tight. A strip covered her mouth. Her eyes fluttered open at the burst of light, pupils huge, unfocused. She tried to jerk away, but her body barely obeyed. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice going gentle in an instant. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay. I've got you." He peeled the tape from her mouth. She gasped, sucking in hot air like someone surfacing from too deep. "Sun," she rasped. "The sun." Ethan's gaze flicked automatically to her neck. Faint bruises, no obvious bleeding. Pupils slow, but reactive. Dehydration. Heat. Fear. "We need help," he muttered. He reached for his phone. No service. Of course. The drive-in sat just low enough in the terrain to be a dead zone. He'd learned that the first week. "Rex!" The dog barked once, sharp. "Stay with her," Ethan ordered. Rex hopped into the back seat without question, settling beside the girl, his body forming a warm, solid wall between her and the world. His nose touched her cheek, a soft, rumbling reassurance. Her fingers twitched, brushing his fur, clinging. Ethan slammed the door, sprinted around the car, slid into the driver's seat, and jammed the keys. There were no keys. The ignition was empty. Swearing under his breath, he dropped down, yanked the panel under the steering column, fingers working by memory, stripped wires, a quick twist, a spark. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. He floored it. The sedan slewed sideways in the dust before catching, bouncing over potholes on its way back to the main road. Behind him, inside the car, the girl made a soft, broken sound. Rex shifted his weight, bracing, eyes forward, ears angled back as if tracking Ethan's heartbeat. "Hold on," Ethan muttered, more to himself than anyone else, as the town rose up ahead, small and sunburned, and suddenly not nearly empty enough. The sheriff's office in Red Mesa sat between the diner and a pawn shop. A single cruiser slumped outside in the shade. Ethan skidded the sedan to a stop at the curb, killed the engine, and launched himself out. "Sheriff!" he roared as he yanked open the back door. "Need a medic! Now!" By the time Sheriff Dean Holloway stepped out, one hand on the butt of his holstered pistol, the other pushing his hat back, Ethan was already cutting through the duct tape with his pocket knife. Holloway was in his 50s, tall, with a paunch that didn't quite match the way he carried himself. His eyes were pale, almost washed-out blue, and in another life, he might have been someone's kindly uncle. Out here, he was the law. "What in the hell?" he started, then stopped when he saw the girl. His expression shifted. Shock, concern, something flashing too fast beneath it for Ethan to read. "Jesus!" the sheriff muttered. "Get her inside! Clara!" he bellowed over his shoulder. "Call the clinic. Tell them we're coming in hot." Things blurred for a while, in that way emergencies did. Hands, voices. The girl, Lena, her name was Lena, on a gurney, an oxygen mask on her face, an EMT checking her vitals. Ethan answering questions in short, flat sentences. Where did you find her? How long was she there? Did you see anyone else? Rex pacing like a caged lion outside the clinic doors until they finally let him lie beside the gurney. Through all of it, the phrase Lena had whispered looped in his head. The sun. Not help. Not please. The sun. Hours later, when the girl was stable and sedated, when Holloway clapped him on the shoulder and called him a hero, when the town's gossip machine hummed into overdrive, Ethan and Rex walked back to the motel in a silence that felt too heavy for how well things had supposedly turned out. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd stepped on the edge of something he couldn't see the bottom of. That feeling got worse 2 days later, when Lena disappeared. No discharge paperwork, no ambulance, no explanation that made sense. One night, she was resting in a room that smelled like disinfectant and cheap coffee. The next morning, her bed was empty and every nurse suddenly had a different answer. Transferred to a bigger hospital in Albuquerque, Clara, the head nurse, said, not quite meeting his eyes. Too complicated for us. Which hospital? Ethan asked. She hesitated. Paperwork's on the way, she said. You know how it is. Ethan did know how it was, and he knew when someone was lying. Rex knew too. The dog stood in the middle of the clinic hallway, staring at Lena's empty bed, the fur along his spine rippling like a wave. He took one step toward the door, then another, stopping at the threshold as if waiting. Waiting for what? Ethan didn't know. That night, wind pushed clouds over the desert. Lightning flickered on the horizon like distant artillery. Ethan sat on the motel bed with files spread out. Old after-action reports, letters from JAG lawyers, the official summary of Coal Incident RC Zone 9. The words swam. He was tired, bone tired. Tired of being angry at people he'd never see. Tired of replaying the mistake that had killed 12 civilians and 2 of his own. Tired of wondering if he'd missed something, somewhere. Rex lay on the floor by the door, head on his paws. When the dog lifted his head, Ethan almost didn't notice. When Rex's ears pricked and he gave that soft, almost inaudible chuff deep in his throat, Ethan did. What? He asked, already rising. Rex was on his feet now, moving with purpose. Not the frantic urgency from the drive-in, and not simple curiosity. Something between. He padded to the door and looked back, eyes catching the thin line of motel room light. You want out? Ethan asked. Rex flicked his gaze to the knob, then back to Ethan. It was such a human-looking expression that it sent a prickle through Ethan's already frayed nerves. Fine, he said, reaching for the leash on the chair. Walk it is. The town at night was a different animal. Most of the trucks were gone from the diesel pumps. The diner's neon buzzed weakly. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked, then another, sound traveling in strange echoes. Heat still radiated from the blacktop, though the air had cooled. Rex didn't take the usual route. He led Ethan past the gas station, past the shuttered bar, past the laundromat that never actually seemed to have anyone doing laundry, down a narrow side street that dead-ended at the Red Mesa water tower. The tower rose out of the desert like a metal mushroom, its tank painted years ago with a cheerful yellow sun, faded now, peeling. The town had been proud of that sun once. The letters beneath it spelled out, "Welcome to Red Mesa," in blocky, stenciled white. Now, under the low clouds, it felt more like something watching. Rex stood at the base of the tower and looked up, nose working. What? Ethan asked softly. You want me to see something? Or are you just developing a thing for municipal infrastructure? The dog ignored him. Instead, he trotted to the backside of the concrete base, where sand piled up in a crescent. He began to dig. Ethan's breath stuttered for a moment. He had seen this before. Different place, different mission, same intensity. This was not boredom or random behavior. This was target acquisition. Dust and grit flew. Rex was methodical, muscles working under his coat. 30 seconds, a minute. Then his paws struck something that wasn't dirt, a dull thud. He paused, glanced back at Ethan, then scraped the remaining sand away. A black plastic box emerged, no bigger than a lunch pail. Smooth, sealed. No markings except for a single sticker on top. A yellow sun. Not the city's friendly logo. A stylized version, sharp rays, almost like blades. Ethan crouched slowly, pulse hammering. "Easy," he murmured to Rex, who stepped back but stayed close enough that Ethan could feel the dog's body heat against his arm. He brushed sand off the sticker with his thumb. Up close, he could see faint letters printed beneath the sun. Solaris Security Services. The name rang a bell somewhere in the back of his mind, not from TV ads or town talk, from briefing slides, from the classified side of the world. Private security contractors with glossy brochures and very little oversight. "What are you doing in my town?" Ethan whispered. The box had a small circular latch, no padlock, no combination. Almost as if whoever had buried it thought the desert was security enough. Ethan popped the latch and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in, foam were three things: a satellite phone, an external hard drive the size of a cigarette pack, and a stack of laminated plastic cards bound with a rubber band. He picked one up. It was an ID card, the kind you used to get through secure doors. It bore a logo, a stylized sun again, and a photo of a man in his 40s, dark-haired, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Name, Randall Pike. Position, Director, Border Operations. Company Solaris Security Services. The chill that rolled through Ethan's chest this time was different. Randall Pike had once been Lieutenant Commander Pike, Ethan's CO, the man who had signed off on the drone coordinates that ruined Ethan's life. Rex's breath huffed near his hand, hot and steady. The next card wasn't an ID, it was a badge. Bronze, heavy, stamped with the words Federal Contractor and a series of numbers. Another card, access credentials, printed with zones and clearances. Another, a laminated map dotted with small suns. The suns formed a line along the border, not at the official crossings. Out in the forgotten stretches, dry riverbeds, arroyos, abandoned ranches. Ethan recognized two of the coordinates immediately. He'd seen them in mission plans. The satellite phone was already on, its small screen faintly glowing. There was a message waiting, marked with a tiny envelope icon. Ethan hesitated. Then he opened it. Meet time confirmed, same drop site, no delays. Cargo moves when the sun goes out. RP. The desert seemed to tilt under his feet. Cargo. A girl bound in the trunk of a car whispers about the sun. A buried cache stamped with Pike's new logo. Rex whined, just once, low and uneasy. Ethan shut the box and stood slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. In that moment, the structure of his world shifted. Lena's abduction wasn't random. Solaris wasn't just selling sensor towers and surveillance drones. The coordinates on that map weren't just about keeping people out. They were routes, and cargo moving under cover of their own systems. He had seen ugly things in his career. People always found ways to make money off suffering, but this had Pike's fingerprints all over it. And if Pike was here, in Red Mesa's orbit, using Ethan's old unit's tech to run something in the shadows, then the drone strike that had destroyed Ethan's life might not have been a tragic error at all. It might have been a field test. Rex shifted closer, pressing his flank against Ethan's leg. "Yeah," Ethan whispered, his voice rough. "I know, buddy, I know." He put everything back in the box, snapped it shut, and reburying it just deep enough to hide, not enough to lose. Evidence. But evidence wasn't enough. Not yet. Not here. They needed proof. They needed to understand what "when the sun goes out" meant. And they needed to do it without anyone knowing they knew. For 3 days, Ethan played the part of a man who had done a good deed and gone back to, quietly failing at his own life. He fixed the ice machine at the motel. He changed the oil for a trucker too tired to do it himself. He nursed a beer at the bar and listened. Red Mesa had always been a crossroads. People passed through with stories half told, secrets trailing behind them like exhaust. Now, with the new border security contract the sheriff bragged about, best tech in the business, keeps the bad guys out and money in the county, there were more men in crisp polos with company logos at the diner, more unmarked SUVs with government plates, more security cameras going up on poles. Rex watched everything. He sat by the diner window while Ethan pretended to read the paper. His gaze tracked every Solaris truck, every federal agent. When Holloway walked in, laughing too loudly, slapping shoulders, Rex's ears flattened for a moment. Ethan noted that. He also noted the way the sheriff's eyes flicked, almost involuntarily, toward the water tower every time he stepped out into the sunlight. At night, Ethan and Rex walked. They followed the faint glow of new floodlights on distant ridges. They watched drones buzz overhead, small, quiet, almost invisible. They saw black SUVs heading out into the desert along unmarked dirt tracks. On the fourth night, the text came through on the satellite phone. New cargo arrives, O100. Confirm sundown window. RP, Ethan stared at the words on the tiny screen until they blurred. Sundown, no moon that night. Overcast, minimal natural light. A perfect time for movement. A perfect time to test how well your surveillance systems could see in the dark. A perfect time to move human beings like boxes. He felt something cold and sharp settle into place inside him. There was a reason Pike had always liked metaphors about illumination. We bring light to the battlefield, he used to say in briefings. We see what the enemy can't. Now, apparently, he was using that light to blind everyone else. Ethan opened the cached map again, tracing the dots with his thumb. One of the suns blinked faintly. When he tapped it, the screen zoomed in on a dry wash 15 miles south of town. Drop sight. Rex pressed his muzzle under Ethan's hand, eyes bright. You remember that smell, don't you? Ethan murmured. Convoys at night, engines, fear. Rex's tail gave a small, grim flick. We're not on their leash anymore, Ethan whispered. We decide what happens now. It wasn't a mission in the way the Navy would have defined it. There was no command structure, no support, no QRF waiting over the horizon. There was a disgraced SEAL, a dog who'd seen too much, a kidnapped girl whose fate they didn't know, and a town sitting on top of something rotten. But it was enough. They left just after midnight. Ethan took the back roads, headlights off whenever he could, trusting his memory of the terrain. The old pickup the motel owner let him drive rattled and complained, but it moved. Rex stood braced in the passenger seat, staring out into the dark, nose working. They parked a mile short of the coordinates and continued on foot. The desert at night was not silent. Crickets chirped. An owl swooped by, wings whispering. Somewhere, a coyote yipped. The sky was a low, oppressive lid of cloud, reflecting back the faint glow of distant towns. They heard the convoy before they saw it. Engines, low and powerful, tires crunching over gravel, voices carried on the cool wind, tinny and distorted. Ethan dropped behind a scrubby mesquite, one hand on Rex's collar. 3 vehicles, 2 SUVs in front, 1 in back. Between them, a box truck with a Solaris logo painted on the side in that same stylized sun. Floodlights snapped on, washing the wash in harsh white. Figures spilled out of the SUVs, men in tactical gear, moving with the discipline of people who had done this many times. The back of the truck rolled up. Inside, in the glare, Ethan counted 7 shapes. Small, some standing, some slumped, hands bound, eyes wide. Children. His grip on Rex's collar tightened until his knuckles ached. Rex didn't growl. He just stared, head low, every line of his body saying the same thing Ethan's blood was screaming. You do not do this, not on our watch. A figure stepped out from the shadows at the edge of the floodlight's circle, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a ballistic vest over a neatly pressed shirt. Even from this distance, Ethan recognized the set of his shoulders, the cocky tilt of his head. Pike. Randall Pike had aged, sure, more gray at his temples, deeper lines around his mouth. But the eyes were the same, sharp, assessing, always calculating. Move them fast, Pike said, his voice carrying over the wash. We have a 30-minute blind spot while the drones are cycling diagnostics. After that, I want them underground. One of the men asked something Ethan couldn't hear. Pike chuckled. Don't worry, our friends on the other side will be ready. They pay enough, they can do the lifting. We just keep the lights broken long enough. The phrase hit Ethan like a punch. Keep the lights broken. How many times had he watched feeds go dark in the seconds before something bad happened, told it was weather or interference or just one of those things? How many of those outages had been deliberate? A child stumbled getting out of the truck and fell to their knees. A guard grabbed their arm roughly, hauling them up. Rex's body tensed, his paws dug into the dirt. Easy, Ethan breathed. Easy, boy. We can't help anyone if we get shot in the first 30 seconds. He needed proof. The hard drive in the water tower box was one piece. This was another. He dug out his phone, not for service, but for the camera. He snapped photos, zoomed in on faces, on license plates, on the Solaris logo beside the federal contract numbers. Rex stayed utterly still, as if he understood the need for silence. They watched the transfer. The children were loaded into 2 waiting vans that had come up from the other side of the wash, plates covered in mud. Pike stood with a tablet in his hand, checking something, nodding. When it was done, he glanced up at the ridge. For a moment, Ethan's heart stopped. The angle was wrong. The light against the clouds made strange silhouettes. There was no way Pike could see them, and yet, those eyes had always been good at finding ghosts. "Sunrise in 6 hours," Pike called to his men. "Let's be done by then. The world looks different in daylight, gentlemen. Remember that." They laughed the way people laughed who had stopped remembering there were lines between right and wrong. The convoy pulled out. Ethan waited until the sound of the engines faded, until the floodlights were killed one by one, plunging the wash back into shadow. Only then did he let go of Rex. The dog surged forward a few yards, nose to the dirt, inhaling deeply. In the dark, his harness strap brushed Ethan's fingers. "Yeah," Ethan whispered. "Lock it in. We're going to need this trail." They didn't try to follow that night. Not with 3 vehicles of armed men and who knew what kind of surveillance in the area. Instead, Ethan retreated to the truck, heart pounding, mind on fire. He had enough to know the shape of what Pike was doing. He did not have enough to stop him. For that, he needed help, real help, which meant trusting someone again. The idea made his skin crawl. Back in town, the first place he went was not the sheriff's office. It was the tiny, overworked clinic. Clara, the nurse, was restocking shelves when he knocked softly on the back door. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her scrubs wrinkled. She froze when she saw him. "Oh," she said, "it's you." Ethan studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the twitch at the corner of her mouth when he said Lena's name, the way her gaze flicked toward the hallway as if expecting someone. "I know she didn't get transferred," he said quietly. "I know she vanished. And I know you're scared to talk about it." Clara swallowed. "You bring trouble with you, Cole," she whispered. "That girl, those men, Sheriff Holloway, it's all tied together. You try to pull one thread, the rest tightens." "Then help me cut it," Ethan replied. "I'm not asking you to go on TV. I just need to know one thing. Did Lena wake up? Did she say anything else?" Clara's shoulders sagged. "She woke up once," she said, "just before they came." "Who?" "Federal contractor, Solaris." Her lip curled slightly on the name. "They had papers, orders. Sheriff signed them, said she was a witness in a trafficking case and needed to be moved for her own safety." "Do you believe that?" "No," Clara said flatly, "because when she woke up, she grabbed my wrist and said, 'Don't let the sheriff take me back to the sun.' And then she passed out again. The sun, the box, the trucks. Pike. Ethan felt Rex press against his leg, as if reminding him he wasn't standing there alone. "Thank you," he said. Clara's eyes filled unexpectedly. "They used to send me Christmas cards," she whispered. "Students I'd patched up, old folks I'd held hands with. Now, I get memos from Solaris about chain of custody and lawyers warning me about liability if I make trouble. Whatever you're planning, be smart, Cole. These men don't just kill." Ethan nodded once. He didn't say he knew that better than anyone. He didn't say he'd already been killed once in a way. He just walked out into the dawning light, Rex at his side, and knew, with a clarity he hadn't felt since before the drone strike, exactly what he had to do. Step 1 was getting that hard drive out of the ground. Step 2 was getting it into the hands of someone Pike couldn't buy. And Step 3 was surviving long enough for that to matter. They dug up the box at noon, when the town was hottest and laziest, when no one wanted to be outside unless they had to. Ethan swapped the hard drive into a smaller inner pocket of his pack, along with the ID cards and the satellite phone. The box he reburied with a decoy. Old motel keys, some random junk. If anyone else came digging, they'd find nothing useful. He thought about just driving straight east, hard, not stopping until they hit a bigger city, a federal office, a news station, throw the evidence on a desk, watch the world burn. But Solaris had eyes on the roads, The contract gave them control of every checkpoint, every camera, every smart sensor out there. Pike didn't need to chase him. He could just wait for the border to do his work, which meant the only way out was the way in, the back way, the old ranger trails. There was exactly one person in town who knew those like the lines on their own hands: Sheriff Holloway. The irony burned. He found Holloway at the edge of the football field behind the high school, watching teenagers run drills in the heat. The sheriff's hand rested on his belt. He looked, in that moment, like just another small-town lawman. Rex didn't buy it. The dog's hackles lifted as they approached, a low rumble starting in his chest. Kids glanced over, moved a little farther away. "Easy," Ethan murmured, laying a hand on Rex's harness. Holloway turned, shading his eyes, a smile already forming, until he saw Ethan's face. Then the smile faded, just a little. "What can I do for you, Cole?" he asked. "You here to file another complaint about my paperwork?" "I'm here to ask why a girl you called a victim begged a nurse not to let you take her back to the sun before she disappeared," Ethan said calmly. "And why my old CO is using your town as a shipping hub." Holloway's jaw tightened. "You sure you want to have this conversation here?" he asked softly. "Why not?" Ethan replied. "Plenty of witnesses." The sheriff's eyes flicked to Rex, then to the kids on the field, then back. "Come by my office tonight," he said. "After dark, we'll talk." Ethan almost laughed. "You're a lot of things, Sheriff," he said. "Subtle isn't one of them. I'm not walking into your office alone." Something like regret ghosted across Holloway's face. "Then I guess we don't talk," he said. "And you keep poking a bear that has more teeth than you can see." Ethan stepped closer, just enough to make the sheriff's hand twitch on his belt. "I've been mauled by bigger animals than you," he said quietly. "I walked away. Can you say the same when this breaks open?" "Because it will. Pike can't keep all his sins buried, not with people like Lena out there, and not with men like me who have nothing left to lose." For a moment, the wind died. The kids' shouts blurred. Holloway's voice, when it came, was low. "You think I like this?" he asked. "You think I woke up one day and said, 'You know what I'd love? Being owned by a contractor out of D.C. who can cut our funding with one phone call? I keep this town alive, Cole. I keep kids fed.' Pike walks in with a federal contract and a smile and tells me if I play ball, Red Mesa gets new patrol cars and a clinic that doesn't leak when it rains." "And the cost?" Ethan asked. The sheriff's eyes were flat. "Don't ask questions if you're not ready to hear the answers," he said. "Go back to your motel. Forget the girl. Forget your CO. This will pass." Ethan held his gaze, then shook his head. "No," he said simply. "It won't." He walked away before he could say anything that would make Holloway draw on him. That night, the attack came. Not as a midnight raid on his motel room, like he half expected. Not as a quiet knock on the door with a warrant and a pair of cuffs. It started with the lights. At 8 p.m., Red Mesa's power flickered, then went out. The neon at the diner died mid-buzz. The soft whir of the air conditioner in Ethan's room sputtered and fell silent. The town exhaled into darkness. Rex was on his feet before the second flicker, standing between Ethan and the window, eyes fixed on the parking lot. Headlights swept past once, twice, 3 times. Too slow to be traffic, too coordinated to be an accident. Ethan's phone buzzed, no message, just the screen lighting up with a number he hadn't seen in over a year. Pike. He let it ring twice, then answered. "Cole," Randall Pike's voice drawled, casual and cheerful, as if they were back in the ready room at Coronado. "I've been trying to track you down. Imagine my surprise when I heard you'd taken up charity work in my area of operations." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "You've moved up in the world, sir," he said. "From briefing slides to human cargo. Congratulations." A soft chuckle traveled down the line. "I always appreciated your sense of humor," Pike said. "I don't suppose you know anything about a missing equipment box near a certain water tower, or a satellite phone that pinged from a restricted sector last night?" "Maybe your system's glitched," Ethan said. "They do that a lot, I hear, especially when civilians die." The chuckle faded. "I'm offering you a chance," Pike said, voice cooling. "Turn over what you took. Walk away. I'll make sure your record gets quietly corrected. You'll go from disgraced to unfortunate victim of bureaucratic error. You can grow old somewhere with your dog and pretend you never saw anything. And the kids in the truck? Ethan asked. The ones you sold into whatever hell waits on the other side? Do they get clean records too? Silence. When Pike spoke again, the mask was gone. You were good at following orders once, he said. You knew how to keep your eyes forward and your mouth shut. I'm giving you the courtesy of remembering that. Don't make me come take what's mine. You won't like how that ends. Ethan looked down. Rex was staring at him, ears forward, like he understood every word. You already took everything that was mine, Ethan said quietly. My unit, my name, my sleep. The only thing left is the part of me that still knows the difference between a mission and a war crime. I'm not giving that up too. Pike sighed. Have it your way, he said. When the sun goes out, some people see stars. You're not one of them. The line went dead. Headlights swept across the curtains again, braking hard this time. Rex growled. Ethan dropped the phone, grabbed his pack, and swung it onto his shoulders in a single, practiced motion. The hard drive thumped against his spine. Move, he said. They went out the bathroom window, into the alley behind the motel, seconds before the front door exploded inward under someone's boot. Rex hit the ground in a clean, controlled jump. Ethan followed, rolling, springing up, already scanning. The alley was a narrow channel of shadow between the motel and the laundromat. The sky overhead glowed faintly from the spillover light of distant towns. Voices shouted at the front, feet pounding on concrete, too heavy to be the usual crowd. Pike hadn't sent local deputies. He'd sent professionals. Rex took point, nose high, ears swiveling. Ethan followed a step behind, ducking under sagging power lines, skirting trash cans, cutting across the back lot of the pawn shop. They moved like they had always moved, two parts of a single unit. Gunfire cracked behind them. The motel sign shattered, raining sparks over the parking lot. Someone shouted, "Back! Back! Target's on foot!" A round slapped into the wall inches from Ethan's shoulder. Plaster dust sprayed. He cut left into the thin line of scrub that separated town from desert. And Red Mesa tried to swallow them. Lights flared to life on the ridges. Flood beams snapped on, sweeping the slopes. Drones hummed overhead, their tiny rotors barely audible over the pounding in Ethan's ears. They were in Solaris's house now. Every camera, every sensor, every algorithm was tuned to find two heat signatures moving fast away from town. They needed to disappear. "Rex!" Ethan hissed. The dog glanced back. "Tunnel," Ethan said. It wasn't a command Rex had ever been taught, but somewhere in his training, somewhere back in the days when he'd learned to find air pockets in collapsed buildings and low entries under walls, the dog understood. He darted toward the main drainage ditch that ran under the highway. A culvert, concrete and rank with stagnant water, the kind of place no one wanted to crawl through unless they had no choice. Tonight, they had no choice. They slid down the embankment together, splashed into ankle-deep water, and ran, hunched under the low, echoing ceiling. The roar of the highway above became a muffled thunder. The glare of searchlights cut off sharply at the tunnel's mouth. For a few precious seconds, they were blind to the outside world, and the world was blind to them. "You know where we're going?" Ethan panted, half laughing, half breathless. Rex tilted his head just enough to bump Ethan's leg, then kept running. When they emerged on the far side, away from town, the desert opened up in front of them. No lights, no houses, just sageland, low and rolling, dotted with scrub and cacti and the long, dark silhouettes of wind turbines turning slowly against the clouds. The turbines were new. Pike's company had insisted on them as part of a green energy initiative for the region. People had grumbled about the noise and the blinking red lights at night. Ethan had seen the blueprints. The maintenance building at the base of the biggest turbine wasn't just for spare parts. It housed a server rack, a mainframe that tied every drone, every camera, every sensor for 50 miles into one hub. If he needed a place to hit Solaris where it hurt, that was it. He glanced at Rex, whose tongue lolled slightly as he ran, eyes bright. "You led me to the box," Ethan said. "Now I'm leading you." The turbines loomed larger as they approached, red warning lights pulsing at their tips. The air was full of a low, constant whoosh, like the breath of some enormous, indifferent machine. The maintenance building was a squat concrete block at the base of the central tower, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. A single camera peered down at the gate. A keypad blinked green. Rex sat in the shadow of a boulder, while Ethan crawled closer, belly to dirt, counting patterns. The camera panned left, right, lingered in the center. 2-second blind spot on the sweep, he murmured. Sloppy. He moved on the third pass. By the time the camera came back, he was inside its blind cone beneath it, pressed against the wall. Up close, he could see the model number stamped on its casing. Solaris. Of course. He reached up, fingers deft, and loosened a panel, pulling a cable just enough to fuzz the feed without killing it. Static streaked the lens. Somewhere, an operator muttered about losing resolution. It bought him 60 seconds. He ducked back to the fence, clipped the wire with his multi-tool, and slipped through, Rex at his heels. The door to the maintenance building was locked. Ethan's stolen badge, Pike's picture turned inward, fit the reader perfectly. The smell inside hit him first. Cold metal, ozone, the faint tang of hot circuitry. And under it all, a sour human note. Fear. There was someone in here. A figure spun around as the door shut. A young man, early 20s, Solaris polo, lanyard around his neck, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" he started. Rex stepped forward and growled. The man's words died. "Hands where I can see them," Ethan said, drawing his pistol. "Slowly." The kid's hands went up, trembling. Hey, okay," he gasped. "Whatever you think, man, I just monitor the network. I don't even carry a gun." Ethan believed him. He also knew that didn't matter. "You log drone paths?" Ethan asked. "Sensor outages, blind spots?" The kid nodded, Adam's apple bobbing. "You record them?" Ethan pressed. "Somewhere off-site so Pike can prove to the feds he's doing his job?" Another nod. Ethan jerked his chin at the central rack. A column of blinking lights, cables, hard drives. "All that?" he asked. "It's mirrored," the kid stammered. "Satellite uplink, government oversight servers, redundancy, in case of, attacks." "Good, perfect." Ethan stepped closer, keeping the gun steady. "What's your name?" he asked. "Luis," the kid whispered. "Luis, listen to me very carefully," Ethan said. "Your boss is running people through his own gaps. He's selling kids under the cover of the system you maintain. Everything he does on that front, he does like he does everything else, with receipts. That means this rack right here has a record of every time he manually dropped coverage, every time cameras went dark, every equipment malfunction." Luis's eyes darted to the monitors. "I don't," he started. "You do," Ethan said, voice hardening. "You might not want to know, but you do, and someday, some senator is going to drag you into a hearing and ask why you kept that job. So here's your shot at a better answer. You're going to help me pull those logs. Then you're going to hit send to someone Pike can't touch fast enough." Luis swallowed again. "If I help you," he whispered, "I'm dead." "If you don't," Ethan replied. "How long do you think you last when Pike realizes the only person who could have noticed his pattern was you?" A beat. Then, slowly, Luis lowered his hands. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Rex's tail gave one. Small thump against the floor. 40 minutes later, Ethan had what he needed. A compressed file, heavy with time-stamped logs, manual overrides, drone paths suddenly diverted from certain coordinates at certain times. Luis had even thrown in access codes and a direct uplink channel to a federal oversight office in El Paso. Contacts he wasn't supposed to have, but had kept just in case. "Why are you doing this?" Luis asked quietly as Ethan sealed the external drive into a waterproof sleeve. "Because a girl asked me not to let the sun swallow her," Ethan said. "Because a dog didn't listen when I told him to heel. Because a man I used to trust turned the tools we built for protection into weapons against the people we swore to defend. Pick your reason." "Will this fix anything?" Luis asked. Ethan's gaze dropped to Rex. The dog stared back, calm, steady. "It's a start," Ethan said. Outside, the wind picked up. The turbines groaned, and the sound of approaching engines rolled across the desert. Pike had found them. "Back door?" Ethan asked. Luis nodded, pale. "Emergency hatch," he said, pointing to a small metal door partly hidden behind a rack. "Maintenance only. It drops down to the base of the hill. No cameras. Too steep for a truck." "Perfect," Ethan said. "You coming?" Luis stared at the door, then at the monitors, where a row of camera feeds showed SUVs converging on the compound, and in one, Sheriff Holloway's cruiser hanging back, lights off. "You can walk out now," Ethan said. "Pretend you saw nothing. Or you can move before Pike decides the safest way to secure this place is to put a bullet through the only person who knows where the logs went." Luis grabbed his backpack without another word. They hit the hatch just as the first SUV slammed to a stop at the front gate. Sliding, scrambling down the rocky slope, Ethan felt a strange, fierce calm settle over him. He had evidence. He had at least one insider. He had a target, an uplink number that would blast this file straight into the inboxes of people legally required to care. And he had Rex. The last part mattered more than he would ever be able to explain. By dawn, they were 15 miles from town, holed up in an abandoned roadside chapel with boarded-up windows and a cracked bell that would never ring again. Luis slept in a pew, snoring softly, utterly spent. Ethan sat near the altar with the satellite phone in his hand. The number Luis had given him was printed on a crumpled, coffee-stained note, a direct line to an internal affairs agent who had tried, once, to audit Solaris and had been conveniently reassigned. Rex lay at Ethan's feet, head on his paws, amber eyes upturned. "You ready, partner?" Ethan asked. Rex's tail thumped once. Ethan plugged in the hard drive, held his breath, and hit send. The file transfer bar crawled across the tiny screen. 15%, 30, 60. Outside, a bird called. A truck rumbled faintly on the highway, oblivious. 99, complete. For a moment, the chapel felt very, very quiet. Then the phone rang. Unknown number, federal prefix. Ethan answered. "Whoever this is," a woman's clipped voice said on the other end, "you just sent me enough classified telemetry data and control logs to ruin both our careers. Tell me why I shouldn't trace your signal and have you arrested." "Because the logs show a pattern of deliberate surveillance outages coinciding with the movement of trafficked minors," Ethan replied. "Because they're signed by Randall Pike's credentials, and because if you wait more than 10 minutes, he's going to wipe every mirror you haven't already unplugged." A pause. "Name," she demanded. "Ethan Cole," he said. "Formerly SEAL Team 4, currently persona non grata. But that's less important than the girl your systems lost 2 days ago out of Red Mesa Clinic. Her name's Lena. I'd like to make sure she doesn't disappear again." Another pause, longer. "You're either insane or telling the truth," the woman said. "Either way, you've just started a war. Sit tight. Do not turn that phone off. Do not move. Do not do anything without me telling you." A click sounded in the background of her line. Ethan froze. That wasn't on his end. That was on hers. "Oh, for God's sake," the woman muttered. "They're already here." Her voice snapped back, urgent. "Cole, listen to me. You're burned. Pike will have local law and his own people on you in under an hour. We'll move on this, but bureaucracy doesn't sprint. You want to survive long enough to watch him fall?" "Kind of the goal," Ethan said dryly. "Then get off the grid," she said. "Lose the phone, trust your dog, and when the lights start going out in D.C., you'll know we hit something." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone for a long beat, then set it gently on the stone floor. Rex watched him, ears up. "Looks like we're back where we started," Ethan said softly. "Just you, me, and the dark." He walked outside, the early sun casting long shadows from the chapel's broken cross. The desert spread out in every direction, vast and indifferent. He dropped the satellite phone into the old baptismal basin and smashed it once, twice, 3 times with a broken brick, plastic shattering. Then he buried the pieces out by the fence. When it was done, he stood for a moment, hands on his hips, breathing hard. Rex leaned against his leg. "Yeah," Ethan whispered. "I know. It never ends the way they promise." It didn't end that day. It didn't end that week. But it did end. They heard about it in a gas station 3 states away. 3 months later, Ethan was paying for coffee. The TV over the candy rack was tuned to a 24-hour news channel. The sound was low, but the banner at the bottom screamed, "Federal raid targets border security. Contractor Solaris. Executive Randall Pike in custody." The cashier, a bored kid with purple hair, muttered, "Damn. Guess that guy wasn't so squeaky clean after all. Ethan turned slowly. On the screen, Pike was being led down courthouse steps in handcuffs, jaw tight, eyes flat. Behind him, a woman in a dark suit, the same clipped voice Ethan had heard on the phone, he was sure, stood at a podium speaking about systemic abuse, trafficking corridors hidden under a security umbrella, log files provided by a whistleblower. They mentioned Red Mesa once. The town was now under review. The sheriff had resigned for health reasons. An internal investigation was ongoing. They showed a photo of Lena. She was alive, safe house, protective custody, testifying. Ethan exhaled, a breath he felt like he'd been holding since the day Rex dragged him to that abandoned car. The kid at the register noticed him staring. "Wild, huh?" he said. "Can't trust anyone these days." "Sometimes you can," Ethan replied. He stepped outside, coffee in one hand, the other automatically dropping to scratch behind Rex's ears. The dog looked up at him, tongue lolling in the heat, tail giving a slow wag. "Looks like you got your justice, partner," Ethan said. Rex's eyes met his. "No," his eyes said. "We got ours." They didn't go back to Red Mesa. The town would heal, or it wouldn't. That wasn't Ethan's call anymore. Instead, he and Rex drifted east, then north, following winds and odd jobs and the kind of work that started to find them quietly. A call from Clara about a cousin in trouble in another town with another too helpful contractor. An email from Luis with a forwarded note from that federal agent. "If you ever want a job keeping men like Pike honest, call me." A notice about a nonprofit starting up to support trafficking survivors, asking for consultants who understood security from the inside. Ethan never called the agent back, but he did show up at the nonprofit. They offered him a position on the spot. "Operational security," the director said. "Risk assessment. Protection for people who have every reason to be afraid and no reason to trust." Ethan looked at Rex, who sat calmly at his feet in the office, head high, wearing a borrowed service vest with the words "Support Animal" across the side. "I can't promise I'll be polite to your donors," Ethan said. The director smiled faintly. "I'm not hiring you to be polite," she said. "I'm hiring you because no one gets past that dog without you knowing." That was how Ethan Cole, ex-SEAL, ex-scapegoat, became something he never thought he'd be. A shield. Not for generals or politicians, but for people like Lena. On nights when the call of old ghosts got too loud, when he lay awake hearing the distant thump of rotors and the crack of static on radios, Rex would pad over, drop his heavy head on Ethan's chest, and huff. "Here. Now. We're still moving." And slowly, in the rhythm of new routines and new missions that started with protecting instead of punishing, the weight in Ethan's chest shifted, not gone, never gone, but shared. One autumn evening, years later, he found himself on the edge of another small town, watching another sunset bleed across the sky. Kids laughed somewhere behind him. A dog barked, Rex, older now, muzzle graying, still sharp, still ready. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The sun goes out for everyone. Eventually. But some people get to choose how they use the light." Isem. He didn't know if it was the federal agent or Luis or Clara or Lena herself. It didn't really matter. He slid the phone back into his pocket, turned, and whistled. Rex trotted over, tail wagging, eyes bright despite his years. "Come on, partner," Ethan said. "We've got one more night to get through. After that, who knows?" They walked back into town together, side by side, shadows long in the fading light. Whatever storms were coming, whatever darkness waited, Ethan knew one thing with an absolute certainty that went deeper than bone. He had a mission again. He had something worth fighting for. And as long as Rex walked beside him, nose to the wind, refusing to heal when the world needed him to pull instead, he would never have to face it alone.